Thank you all so much for joining us for another Author Hour in Massachusetts. Tonight, featuring best-selling author Martha Hall Kelly in conversation with Lisa Wingate. And Martha is discussing her brand new historical fiction novel, The Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club. So a little bit about Martha. Martha Hall Kelly is the New York Times best-selling author of Lilac Girls, Lost Roses, Sunflower Sisters, and The Golden Doves. Born and raised in Massachusetts, she was inspired to write this novel by her mother's family, the Smiths, who settled on Martha's Vineyard in 1891. She received journalism degrees from both Syracuse and Northwestern universities and worked as an advertising copywriter for many years before becoming a novelist. With more than 2 million copies of her book sold and translated in 50 countries, Martha lives in Litchfield, Connecticut, and Hobe Sound, Florida. Might be mispronouncing that, I apologize. And then Lisa Wingate, our conversation partner tonight, is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Before We Were Yours, which has sold more than 3 million copies and has been translated into over 40 languages worldwide. The co-author with Judy Christie of the nonfiction book Before and After. Lisa is an Oklahoma Book Award finalist, a Goodreads Choice Award winner, and a Southern Book Prize winner. She lives in the hill country of Texas and the mountains of Colorado. So everyone who is watching live and the many more that will watch the recording, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Martha and Lisa for joining us here tonight. And Martha and Lisa, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Yay.
Robert, that was amazing.
That was amazing. Okay, so Martha, my friend, let's start out with just a quick lightning round just to warm things up. I love to start with a lightning round.
God.
Preferred mode of writing, laptop, desktop, dictation, pen and paper?
Both pen and paper and laptop. I start with pen and paper and then move to laptop.
Oh, nice.
How about you? What are you like?
Dictation or computer?
Dictation?
Yeah, I do both. I will walk
How do
around
you
with my
do
iPhone and
that?
dictate.
Is there
Yeah,
an app for that?
I just dictate into my email and then mail it to myself and paste it in the manuscript. It's great.
Are you serious? Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna try that. Thank you. I'm learning
yeah.
already. We're only like 30 seconds in.
Get up out of the chair and walk around and talk your story.
That's so fun. Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Favorite indulgence food?
Oh, Fritos.
Fritos.
Yeah. It was flying all over the place on book tour. You know how that is.
Yes.
And that's my treat. Before I get on the plane, I have a little thing of Fritos. How about you? What do you like?
I think coffee. That's probably
Really?
my
That's why
favorite
you're so
indulgent
skinny,
food.
Lisa.
Yeah, I know. I know. Coffee or cheesecake, probably.
Ooh, or together. Those two
Yeah,
are so good together.
definitely. Favorite afternoon pick-me-up on a writing day? Coffee, tea, soda?
Oh, Kachava. I drink a protein drink.
Okay.
How about
Okay.
you? What do you like in the afternoon?
Coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee. I'm an afternoon coffee person too. Um, an author you admire?
Oh my God. Well, every time I start a new book, I read John Irving's Cider House Rules. And so I'd have to say he's my go-to. Uh yeah. How about you?
Oh, so many, but probably Pat Conroy would be the first one that comes to mind. I just love the Southern voice of Pat Conroy. So
Mm.
it might be different depending on which day you ask me, but
Oh,
that
really?
yeah, Pat comes to mind a lot. Um, Favorite childhood book?
Oh, Jane Eyre, for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. I find that kind of creeping into a lot of my books, Jane Eyre. Yeah, it hit me at a time in my life when I needed that book. I was reading a lot of Harlequin romances, and I just, once I read something quality, it was a big difference in my life. How about you? What was your fave?
Oh, Little Black a Pony by Walter Farley was my first and favorite book.
Oh,
I was a little horse girl, so that
did you
was,
have horses growing up?
oh yeah, yeah.
Really? Oh, I'm
Oh
so
yeah.
jealous.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was a pony girl, so we spent hours pretending Little House on the Prairie and all that stuff.
oh my God. Did you read Black Beauty?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Black Beauty and the Black Stallion and every horse book ever made at the time I was a kid, I read.
Oh my God. Either you're a horse person or you're not. It's so funny. My sister's a horse person. Oh my God. She can ride like nobody. It's like she's got this thing with a horse. I've never understood it, but it's so cool.
Yeah, no, that was me for sure.
Really?
Let's see. A book that changed your life.
Ugh.
That's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm just trying to think. I think maybe Gift from the Sea. My that was my mother's favorite book, and I kept reading it and rereading it, trying to see what she saw in it. And then once she passed away, I read it again and I thought, oh my God, I wish I had had this understanding of that book before she died so we could talk about it. But I think that's the kind of book that it takes you a while. You have to be a little bit older to understand it. And how about you? What changed your life?
Well, I loved Gift from the Sea, but I would have to answer Where the Red Fern Grows because when the film of that was being filmed, it was filmed near Tulsa. A classmate of mine was the little redheaded sister in the movie.
Oh my
And so
God.
Wilson Rawls came to our school to speak to us while I sat crisscross applesauce on the floor of the media center in the third grade. And it was the first time I ever realized that writers were not dead people. Like he was just a guy in a flannel shirt, And so yeah, it was life changing
Think-
for me.
Did you think, oh, I can do that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Really?
My first grade teacher told me I'd be a writer. In
Oh,
in Northborough, Massachusetts, actually, since we're in Massachusetts tonight.
it all happens in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it
Basi-
does. It
That's
does.
amazing.
Yeah, but
And
seeing
how
Wilson
old?
Rawls was
How,
amazing.
first grade.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah,
That's amazing. What
she
a
was
teacher.
an amazing teacher.
I think so. Well, look what she created. That's well, but you also knew that you could do it. In first grade, I wasn't thinking about much. I have talking to my neighbor, getting in trouble. But wow,
Well, I
that's
did enough of that too, but I always loved to write and she just identified that in me. An
wow.
amazing
That's so
teacher.
cool.
Favorite genre to read?
Oh, hmm. I'm transitioning. I mean,
Ah,
fiction was always my gateway drug. And, we both have the same publisher, I think, right? We're both Random
right,
House. And
right,
so we read a lot of books that the publishers ask us to
right,
read, and usually historical fiction in our own genre.
right.
But I've been reading thrillers lately and
Oh,
like suspense novels. I don't know what's going on with me. Either I like really like David Sedaris funny or like scary.
hmm.
Andrea Bartz wrote a whole series of great novels, but she has a new one out, Last Ferry Home, and I love her books. How about you? What are you reading right now?
Historical fiction is my favorite genre. And right now I am not on a book. I'm on some research. So
Mm,
um,
I
I
know
will,
how that is.
yeah, I
Yeah.
am about to dig into though Typewriter Beach, which is
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
out or brand new out, and I am
Yeah.
it's going to be my hammock reading here at the cabin.
You have a hammock?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm officially very jealous. I
It's
need a hammock.
66 degrees out today.
66. Do you know it's 100 out here?
Ouch. Oh yeah.
I know. I know. In Massachusetts and Connecticut, which is unusual.
That's too hot. That's too hot. Favorite place to read. Mine would be the hammock.
Oh yeah. I wish I had a hammock. Actually, you can't see it here. Maybe you can. There's a couch over there. It's kind of like a couch bed. And I have to be careful because, you can easily fall asleep on a little couch like that. But that is my favorite place to be for sure.
Oh, nice, nice. I have one of those in my other office too. Um, so if you could go back, I used to interview people when I was a journalist, and I loved to ask some version of this question. If you could go back and relive one day in your life, just one, what would it be?
Mm, wow. I have so many that are fighting for, yeah. I always tell my kids I'd love to go back just for 15 minutes to when they were little and just hold them again. And I mean, it gets me verklempt even talking about it, but just to remember them. I mean, we've got videos and things, but I'd love to just be with them as kids again. And then the other one that's fighting for first place for that is when I went to Ravensbrück concentration camp, when I wrote Lilac Girls about Ravensbrück, it was an all-female concentration camp. And I got to meet two of the so-called rabbits, these women that had been experimented on. And and we became such good friends. And and they're gone now. I would love to go back and just like enjoy that moment because at the time I was so kind of in awe of them and jazzed by the whole thing that I didn't really focus like I wish I could have. So I would go back and visit with them a little bit more. And what about you? What would you do?
Mine is a little similar to your first one. There was a day when my boys were about 4.5 and 1.5. And it was Mother's Day, and uh, we lived way out on a ranch in the country, and they packed a meal, and we went down to the creek side in one of the pastures, and the meal was hot dogs and things that little boys could put together. And we just played the day away down in the water and caught minnows and waded in the water, and the water was still kind of cold, but it was just the sweetest day. And so if I could go back again, it would be that day.
Oh, what a great memory.
Yeah, it is a great memory. Kids in the wild are so much fun. That's one thing I love about the beach is, it's just kids in the wild, and they get dirty, and it doesn't matter, and they get wet and it doesn't matter. And, it was that kind of a day.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so on to book things. So how did you become a writer? We'll start with just the basic writer thing and then get into this book.
Oh my goodness. Well, Miss Reed in first grade was not telling me that I was going to be a writer. No one ever said that to me, sadly. I mean, I became a copywriter, but only because I thought when I went to journalism school, I didn't become a journalist. I became a copywriter only because I loved advertising. I know it sounds very unwriterly, but I just thought the idea that I could earn a living writing commercials, I was just like, that's so fun. But I never really thought about writing a book. I didn't take creative writing classes in journalism school. It wasn't until I went to visit the Bellamy Faraday House and Garden up in, not too far from here, actually. I'm in Litchfield, Connecticut now, and it's in Bethlehem. And it was the home of Caroline Faraday, who I ended up writing this book about. But I wouldn't have become a writer if I hadn't stumbled on that story of Caroline who helped 54 women that were experimented on by the Nazis.
Wow. And so you stumbled on that and you just thought, now I'm going to write a novel about this?
No. I wish it was, I wish it was that story. But it took me 10 years to write because I didn't know I was going to write a book. I just started going up to that house and researching because Caroline's archives are in the basement. And I used to just go up because I was interested in her. And then I met a woman. My husband and I were out after a Broadway show. This other couple invited us. And the female half of the couple, her name's Betty Sargent, we started talking and I told her about my research because I didn't tell anybody. And she said, "Oh, you should write this. This would make a great novel. And by the way, did Mike tell you I'm a book editor?" And I was,
No.
he did not tell me that. And she said, all I need is a chapter. And I thought, well, I'm not going to write a book. Like, I'm not James Patterson. I just didn't get that, like, people just wrote books. I don't know. I thought you had to be trained and the whole thing. So I moved down to Atlanta. My husband became the CEO of the Weather Channel. And we just had my son at that point. My two daughters had already been launched. And I dropped him off at high school and went through the Starbucks drive-through and ordered my usual decaf cappuccino grande. And by mistake, the barista gave me a caffeinated one. And I went home and Lilac Girls just started, it just came out. And not in a good form, but in a way that I started sending chapters. I mean, I was so surprised, but I sent it and I just had this feeling of ecstasy when I started writing, like, why did I not do this before? And I sent the chapters to Betty and she was like, great, keep going. And so I did. So that was how it all started. And thank God I went to that house. We definitely wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Wow, that's an amazing story. That is not the usual.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Okay, so let's dig into this book. Congratulations on the Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club,
Oh,
which
thank you.
I read early
I should.
and love.
Backwards though, right?
Yeah,
And
backwards.
thank you for your blurb. Oh my God, you were so
Oh, I
good.
love that
So
book.
nice to read it.
I think I read it in the winter, so it was off season, but it was a nice visit to the beach in the middle of the winter, I think, when I read it.
I love that.
Um, so without any spoilers for the people who haven't read it yet, who are here or will listen to this, what is the book about? Just give us a little paragraph about what the book's about.
My mom's side of the family, the Smiths, moved or came to Martha's Vineyard in 1891. And their house is still there that they built, and it was a farm. And they didn't live in it at the end of their life. They sold it and moved to like closer to town. But my mom used to tell stories all the time about World War II and what it was like growing up on Martha's Vineyard. And that she told one in particular, and there was an army base on Martha's Vineyard called Peaked Hill on the very highest part of the vineyard. And the army jeeps would go in convoys on their way to their army base, and they'd stop at my grandmother's at this house to buy the warm donuts that my grandmother made. She lost her husband pretty young, and he left her with four children to raise and no money. So she used to make donuts, 25 cents for a dozen, which I don't know how she made any money. But these soldiers would stop and get the donuts. And my mom was only 14 at the time, but she used to love seeing how handsome the men were.
I
And
bet.
but what she didn't realize, no one really realized at the time, was they were there training for Normandy because the coastline of Martha's Vineyard is very similar to Normandy's. There's a lot of cliffs and rocky beach. And so she said when they found out after the war that only 50% of the men that trained on Martha's Vineyard who had gone to Normandy, only 50% of them survived. She just talked about how sad that was for the island and just in general. She used to repeat that story a lot. So I thought when my daughter suggested, "Oh, Mom, you should write about Martha's Vineyard. You should write about your mom." I thought, well, at least I have that story. And then my mother's best friend is still alive, and she won't tell me how old she is, but she's in her 90s. I mean, I can do the math, but she filled me in on a lot of my mom's stuff, boyfriends, things my mom never told us. So that was super helpful. And I also found a packet of essays that my mom had sent me years ago and I never opened. And it was all stuff about my mom growing up on Martha's Vineyard, all the particularity, which I used in the book.
Wow, that's so interesting. So there's a lot of family stuff in here. And
Yeah.
so that's, because for me, like every book, there's a spark. There's a thing that sparks it. So for you in this book, the spark is the family history and your daughter. kind of suggesting that you write about it?
Absolutely. And I wasn't going to make it about my family, but I found that envelope of essays, and in it was a smaller envelope of she had written, and I had never opened it. I felt so bad. A list of all the books that my daughter should read. She was 3 at the time, and I never read them to her. They were the Littles books. I don't know if you remember
Oh
those.
yeah, yeah. No, I love those.
I know, I know. And so I tipped up that smaller envelope and a tiny heart fell out, a little golden heart. And I just thought, you know what? This is my mom talking to me from beyond. I really, really felt that. And she loved books so much. I mean, she had a huge book club and loved Martha's Vineyard enough to name me after it. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to make this my family and I'm going to write about books because why not? I love books. She loved them. So that's how it all kind of came together.
So is this the book of your heart?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're going to make me cry, Lisa.
Oh, sorry.
Definitely is. But I never know that until the book is over. Do you ever find that where you look back and you go, "Oh, that's what was going on there." But
Yes.
at the time, I just thought, "Oh, I'm going to write this, book about my family." But now that I look back on it, I think I missed my mom a lot, and I feel like I was with her. I do that a lot, though. I create the characters. Like
Mhm.
my daughters, when they went off to college in Lilac Girls, I made um, Kasha and Susanna, the two main sisters in the book. I make them like my little imaginary friends that I can hang out with. And I definitely had my mom and my uncle and my grandma all there. God, sorry to get so sad about it, but it really I just started listening to the audiobook for the first time. My sister sent me her copy. I didn't know you could do that. And God, hearing it read, I was just, I don't know. I was a mess. I had to turn it off.
Yeah, the audiobooks are really, it is like the story coming to life, I think.
So much. And it's like watching a movie in a way. And also my daughter, who just had our first grandbaby, which is so exciting. While she was pregnant with him, I got to go out to LA and she was cast as one of the voices. So she does the Mari part in the book, which is, the woman that in the current day that comes from Los Angeles. So that was really sweet too, to have her with what would have been
Wow.
my mother's great grandchild. It was really special.
That is amazing. I'm impressed that you've raised a voice artist because just reading for the book of they used to ask me several books. They'd write, the publisher would write an email and say, "Hey, do you want to come read the author's note for your audiobook?" And there was always a lot going on. I was like, no, no, no. So finally, Book of Lost Friends, I said yes. I don't think I'll ever do that again. It is so hard.
It is hard. Yeah,
It's
it takes
really
so
hard.
long. If you're not a professional, if they make you do it over and over again, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got
Crazy.
like German names and foreign stuff in there.
It's
Ugh,
crazy hard. I mean,
yeah, it is really
there's a
hard.
guy in your ear saying, no, now stop and read it again from that and whatever.
It's a hard job. I don't think people realize that. They make it look easy.
Oh, yeah, no, I admire anyone who can do an entire part of a book. That is a talent. So I love these pieces of lost or buried history that just have sort of disappeared. So this was inspired by family lore. What else did you discover about I assume then that you researched the history that you probably could, because there's always history um, that we don't know about, even in the places we think we know.
Oh,
Um, Even in the families we think we know, there's history that we don't know. So what things did you discover that just kind of blew your mind or really surprised you?
that's such a great question. I've been going there since I was born, and so many years. And I thought I knew everything, but oh wow. I mean, once I dug into it, thank goodness there's a historian on Martha's Vineyard named Thomas Dresser, and he wrote a book co-wrote it about Martha's Vineyard during World War II. So that was super helpful. When I went to see him on Martha's Vineyard, it looked like a porcupine. It had so many little Post-it notes sticking out of it. And so that was really, really helpful. And one of the things I discovered was that there was a mock invasion on Martha's Vineyard during World War II. And again, they were preparing for Normandy. So they came over from Camp Edwards over in Falmouth, and they invaded Martha's Vineyard. I mean, for real. All the five-star generals came up from Washington to watch, and they brought over all the amphibious vessels. No one had ever seen those before, the ones that landed at Normandy, and they were practicing. And actually, a couple of guys died during some of the training for that. But on the day that it happened, these boats landed. They had airplanes strafing the beach to, kind of pretend to be Nazi planes. They had, those big barrage balloons that are supposed to, keep the planes away. And they had men on shore that were supposed to be the Germans that were preventing them from getting inland. And what the guys had to do, their mission was to get to the airport, which was brand new on Martha's Vineyard. So, spoiler, they made it. But people in Vineyard Haven, one of the big towns in Martha's Vineyard, where my parents ended up living, a woman talked about looking out of her window while she was washing dishes and seeing a serviceman, a soldier with a backpack on in camo, on his stomach, going through her garden on his way to, and it's a pretty, thickly settled little town. So.
Yeah.
So they were all over the island, and people had no idea what was happening because they had to keep it secret. But it was a little strange, I think, for people to see that, because they never knew. I mean, they had plane spotters and things, just in case there were German planes coming over.
Right.
But the other thing that I thought was so interesting was all of the U-boats, the German submarines. And though my mom had told me that they would fall asleep sometimes if they were sleeping near the ocean, and they would hear the hum of the U-boats' batteries when they would surface to recharge their batteries. So they knew that there were German submarines around, which I think, was pretty creepy. But what I didn't realize was just how brazen they had become, because at the beginning of 1942, there was no sonar, there was no catching these subs, and they were downing ships in horrific numbers, and the casualties were just terrible. They were getting the boats before they brought things over for World War II. So Hitler was like, let's get those boats before they even get here. And and also up and down the Eastern Seaboard, not just around Martha's Vineyard, but there's a great story in the book that I got from the Cape Cod Military Museum. And there was a fisherman, a Portuguese fisherman off the coast, and he was going about his business, making his little seafood stew, and he had his live lobsters there. And a U-boat surfaced, guys came on to his boat, took his stew, took his lobsters, and they left him a case of schnapps.
Oh my God.
The guy was so petrified, he threw the schnapps overboard, and he didn't tell anybody until after the war was over. But I just thought that was really kind of indicative of what was going on. The last thing is these little guys, which I've started collecting, which I love so much.
Oh, have you?
These are little armed services editions. Somebody told me that they just had these on CBS Good Morning. They did a show about it. But
I love that story about the armed services
see
edition.
it? Did you see it on?
No, I didn't see it on CBS. I mean, I know it from your book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, these little guys, they're so tiny. I don't even know if you can tell. Like, this is Post-it notes. And so, they're pretty small. But the men couldn't even fit a paperback in their backpacks, and they were just chock full of stuff. So someone in the military came up with the idea of making these little guys, and it's a full book. It's not abridged in any way. And every serviceman on the invasion barges at Normandy had one of these. And of course, only 50% of them got a chance to read their book, but which I find so moving. But while the Nazis were burning books, our military printed 1.5 million of these. And when I found out that they chose the titles for these from a cookie jar. They wrote them down on pieces of paper and pulled them out of the cookie jar. I thought, oh, I'm going to give that story to to one of my protagonists, the two sisters in the book, Cadence. And another funny story is that The Great Gatsby was a kind of a dud when it first came out. I didn't realize that, but Fitzgerald's first 2 books were really popular. But once the servicemen read Gatsby in this little form, they brought it home after the war. It made a whole generation of men readers, and they brought Gatsby home after the war, and all of a sudden it was a huge success.
That's crazy. I never see, you just never know what you'll learn while you're working on a book or reading one.
Amazing. And Martha's Vineyard's a little place, and I thought I knew it all, but clearly not.
Amazing. Amazing. So where, when, how-ish did Briar and Cadence come into the story? These, the two Smith sisters are very different. They make different choices in the end. And did you design them? Do your characters just happen?
They kind of evolved. In the old days, when I first started out, I used to spend, oh my God, so much time. What do they eat? Blah, blah, blah. And now I've gotten to the point where I let them kind of evolve while I'm writing, and that seems to work. But I knew I wanted one of them to be my mother, and that was Cadence. And she's wants to be a publisher, wants to go to New York, wants to get off the island. My mother was desperate to get off of Martha's Vineyard. Finally, when she met my dad, who was in the Coast Guard after the war, she worked in a Marine hospital, and she checked his medical records to make sure he didn't have anything too bad. And because he was kind of, wanted to date her. And as soon as she got her opportunity, she got off the island and married him. But she did love him. But so I feel like, oh God, now I completely forgot the question. I do that. I get.
Did they evolve? The sisters, did they evolve? Did you
sisters? So my mom was Cadence, and then Briar was more, I don't know, just I wanted a younger sister who got in trouble and was really, really smart, but misunderstood by the whole community out there. And that was Briar. And she definitely evolved. I loved creating her. She wears men's clothes, but more just to have the friends that she's loved be close to her. So I feel like she's a really interesting character, and a lot of people she's definitely neurodivergent. She had this 90-year-old or 80-something-year-old very good friend, and they were bonded by their love of the military. And I loved the idea that a 16-year-old girl could be that. That was just her. She loved ship models and military strategy. And she's the one that discovers something on the beach that really changes all of their lives. It really upends everything. But yeah, and Tom is their brother. And he's based on my uncle Sonny, who was shot down in the war over Messina, Italy. He was a ball turret gunner, and I love Tom. Tom's not exactly my uncle, but I tried to make Tom, because a big part of the story with Tom is when is Tom coming home? So I think you have to love him right away. And then Graham is my grandmother, and she makes a lot of food and a lot of donuts in the book. Yes. She's kind of the voice of, she says a lot of the things my grandmother used to say, like, if you can't move heaven, we'll just move. If we can't move heaven, we'll just make hell. Those kind of things. And she used to always say, you'll miss me when I'm gone. And I was like, Yeah, sure. And now, of course, yes,
Or
I definitely miss her. But yeah.
yeah, there's nothing like a spunky grandmother.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's where my mom got it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I love the family. It is um underlying all the history. It's very much a book about family.
Yeah, I think it is. And I love that. I love books about families. And even if it's not a biological family, like getting back to Cider House Rules, I feel like the hospital in that Dr. Larch and the nurses. And I feel like that was a family too. And, they don't have to be related necessarily. And that brings us to Mari, who arrives at Martha's Vineyard, and she's a more contemporary frame. And I was watching Fried Green Tomatoes one day, and I just thought I could have a frame like that. And I love Fried Green Tomatoes, and I love Kathy Bates and Jessica Tandy. And I just thought, just like they have the nursing home, and then they kind of go back in time to Jessica Tandy's world, why not have that in my book? And so that's what I did with Mari. So she arrives on Martha's Vineyard because she found in her mother's effects this name of this famous painter, Elizabeth Devereux, on Martha's Vineyard. So she goes there under the ruse of taking a painting class and confronts Mrs. Devereux about, how did you know my mother? She never left California. What was going on there? And Mrs. Devereux says, well, you're wrong about that. She did leave California. And you better sit down while I tell you the story of these two sisters. So that's how it launches into the story.
Yeah, I loved the frame. I well, it's no secret. I love dual timeline stories, but I there's this theory that time is not linear, that time is a layer cake, and
Mm.
everything that happened in it is tied to places. So everything that happened in a place is still happening. It's just you're only on one layer of the cake. That's the only layer you can see. And so I'm always a little fascinated by, any place you are, like what's on the rest of the layers? What's happening on all those other layers of the cake?
That's
Um,
interesting. They say that dreams are sometimes the layers of things that are happening. Yeah.
yeah, so this, that has that kind of feeling because she comes to the island and she's going to learn um this story that took place, right where she's standing, but that she knows nothing about. But sometimes the things we know nothing about our communities, our families, you're living the effects of it, whether you know about it or not.
That really is true.
Yeah. So I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think it's fun too because you get to see Martha's Vineyard now because a lot of people haven't been to Martha's Vineyard. And it was fun for me to write too. I'm finding I mean, this is my sixth book I'm writing now, and the more I the more I do it, the more I start spotting, oh, okay, I'm doing this for me. Like I put Gil in there, the hot British officer, for
Yeah.
me. And I was like, okay, this is my little fun part. But I used to not identify that, and now I get it. Like I
Okay.
put Sandra in for me. Sandra is the one who eats the fried clams all the time.
Right, right, right. Hey,
Just
tell us about
it's,
a potato bargain.
oh, well, that was one of the things I found in that I wanted to show you the actual envelope, but that was one of the things in the essays that I found in that attic kind of compilation of essays that I found 35 years after my mom sent it. And potato bargain was one of the things that my grandma made. They didn't have money for food oftentimes, especially a protein source. So they always had onions and potatoes in the larder. And so she would just simmer in water onions and potatoes, and that's what they would have for dinner. And she said that my grandmother would set the table with all of her best linens and everything to make it seem like it was a real meal.
I love that. That is so typical of that era. People just made do with what they had, and if you had enough to eat of something, you considered yourself pretty fortunate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they used to get a lot of things at the dump. And I'll never forget, I was talking to Kristen Harmel on Friends in Fiction, and we were talking about what I was writing next. And I talked about this book and how my mom used to get her books at the dump. And Kristen got a little teary. And I was like, it's okay, Kristen. She's so sweet. But it was like my mom, it was okay. There was no shame in going to the dump for them. In fact, they really enjoyed it. All the summer people used to drop off all their books. Number one, my mom was like, yes. And, beautiful clothing and everything that was out of style. But for my mom, she didn't care. I think she got her saddle shoes at the dump. Yeah. So,
I had a
yeah.
grandmother like that.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I still have a piece of furniture that she scavenged out of the dump.
Love it. I felt bad at first because I was like, I was kind of embarrassed about it. But the more I talk to people, I've got my grandma who scavenged something, it was just a different time. I still like going to flea markets and, if there's something on the side of the road that looks great, I'm not,
Oh,
above
for sure.
shopping. Yeah.
No, I agree with you completely. Um, so there's a lot of book, about the importance of books, the importance of book clubs, what we gain from reading together. Um, do you think that book clubs have changed and that they are more or less important now?
Oh, I think way more important. Yeah, yeah. That's really an interesting question. I wrote a thing for People magazine about this, about my mom's book club and then my daughter's book club. And I really feel like women need the companionship so much more now. And I know it's always been a thing, but I think right now it's a crisis. I think that everyone is so separate right now. We're all in our, silos, at home, on the internet. And it's really easy to start feeling bad about yourself. So my daughter was telling me about a friend who's going through a really, really hard time with a personal thing. And she said, the book club just came out for her and we're there for her. And I just, it's a beautiful thing. Like the firemen with the sheet and when they're waiting for someone to like jump out. I feel like if this girl didn't have her book club, I don't know if she would make it. It's really tough. So yes, they talk about books, and that's really important today too, with all the book banning. And I feel like the exchange of ideas is more important than ever. And also with historical fiction, remembering what actually happened, remembering that the Holocaust was actually a thing, is so important. So, but on top of that, it's the personal thing. I think we need each other more than ever.
I completely agree with that. I feel like we used to do community everywhere. You need the people in the grocery store and the guy who pumped your gas and all that. And book places and book clubs are one of the last bastions of that.
Where you can really lean on each other. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it looks like we are ready for audience questions.
I see Robert
I see a
here.
head up above
He's
us.
like a little angel that
Yeah,
just
he is. The book angel has come back.
Devil on your shoulder or angel on your shoulder. I'm not sure which. But yes, so we'll transition to audience questions and comments. We have a solid 15 minutes or so. And Lisa, I'm going to keep you on your toes. The first question is to you, and I think it's a good segue for what you both were just discussing. So, Lisa, this question's for you, but Martha, I'd like you to comment as well. So, Janice Daly, who herself is an author who we've hosted before, she notes that her book club is reading your book for July. It's good timing. But Janice's question, 2 years ago, I heard Lisa speak at the Historical Novel Society conference. Lisa, you spoke of the concept that we're suffering from history deficient disorder. What are our origin stories? Thank you. And then she thanks Martha for writing the book, a perfect example of sharing a piece of your origin story and all the history of World War II and life on the home front. Lisa, what do you mean by history deficient disorder?
So, yeah, I remember saying that at the conference. So when I grew up, I knew because, we talked to people in the community, because we sat at the knee of our grandparents and there wasn't anything on TV you wanted to watch as a kid unless it was Saturday morning. And so, we knew the stories of our community. We knew the stories of our family and the people who came before us and the times that came before us. And these days we don't. When kids don't respect their family name or respect the things in their community, it's often because they don't know the stories behind those things. When we don't respect the traditions of our country, it's because we don't know enough about how hard won those things were. We're seeing that with libraries. If people understood what a fight it was to raise the money to build those libraries and fill them with books, then they would have a different feeling about them. So, we're walking around, a lot of us very history deficient these days. And the younger we are, I think it's almost the worse it is.
Yeah. Martha, did you have any thoughts on that?
It's such an important thing. Oh my God. It's tragic, really. I keep wondering, how has the rise of National Socialism started again? How can people just forget what happened during World War II? And I think maybe it's not being taught like it used to be. Because I think if people really understood what happened in World War II and how, the rise of National Socialism, I don't think that they would be giving the German salute as easily as they are today.
So next couple of questions, we'll go to Martha. First, a comment from Carol, who says, your stories are fantastic. Your books are wonderful. And I can't wait to read this one.
Aww.
And then Brianne asks, Martha, I can't wait to read this book. And Brianne wants to know, do you have a favorite beach on Martha's Vineyard?
Oh, yes. And when you read the book, you'll go there in a way. It's Lambert's Cove Beach. Yeah, for sure. That's the one I grew up on. And, all the beaches on Martha's Vineyard, or most of them, are private. So I was lucky that we had friends that own a house in West Tewksbury. But oh yeah, there's nothing like that beach. And there's a creek that runs into it called Coca-Cola Creek, because it's got I think some sort of iron in it or something. And as little kids, we used to just days and days with no sunscreen, playing in the creek. So yeah, Lambert's Cove, and that is a big part of the book takes place there.
So an anonymous attendee asks, does your first grade teacher know the role she played in inspiring you to write?
So when my first book came out, Tending Roses, I tried to find her through the school, and didn't really have any luck through the school I had gone to. And I didn't know if she was young or old when I had her. I was only in her class a few months, and then we moved again because we had moved quite a bit in that time. But I had the report card where she wrote when I left her class, keep that pencil moving with that wonderful imagination, Lisa. I will see your name in a magazine one day. So I knew her name. So when the third book came out, I dedicated it to her and teachers, because had teachers in the book. And a journalist in Northborough, Massachusetts, wrote an article about how the late Mrs. Crackhart had inspired me. The bookstore lady in town read the article. Mrs. Crackhart was a regular customer of hers and had taught her daughter many years later at the end of Mrs. Crackhart's career. And Mrs. Crackhart was indeed not late at that point. And so I got to thank my first grade teacher. And then for many, many books after, she would send me notes about every book. And the last books I sent to her were, her daughter, Wendy, would email me. And the last books I sent to have Wendy take to her were during COVID. And I have the sweetest picture of her in her 90s, still a reader, with the Book of Lost Friends. And I think before and after the last couple books I sent to her.
That is so sweet.
He was an amazing teacher.
Very nice, very nice. P. Hoffman writes, as a book recommendation from P. Hoffman, you should read The Librarian of Burned Books by Brianna, I'm always butcher Brianna's last name, Labuskis, as it has a character that is all about the ASE books.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, we actually hosted Brianna a few months ago as part of this series, and that was wonderful. I'll try to find the link and post it in the chat.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay, lots of people, giving high praise to the book and to both of your writing careers and this specific conversation. Connie asks, Lisa, what is the book of your heart?
The book of my heart. That is always such a tough question. Partly before we were yours, because it was a life-changing book for me way, way into my career. That was book number 30, but it was the first one that just, blasted off and went nuts in the world. And it led me to a lot of the real life Tennessee Children's Home Society adoptees who are friends who I've gotten to go on the searching for relatives and birth family information journey with. So it's a very special book. The book of my heart is still Tending Roses, which has my grandmother's real stories in it. It's fiction. My family will have you know we are not as neurotic as the people in the book, but the grandmother, the cantankerous grandmother, is my grandmother. The stories are her stories. So it will always be the book of my heart.
Excellent. Mindy is tuning in a little late, but wants you both to know she's here and she is big fans and wants to greet you now and meet you later. So that's great. So, folks, if anyone has any other comments or questions, now is the time. And
Robert, somebody
Yes.
asked, what's the name of the old book shown? Or were they asking about the ASE?
I'm not sure. I was purposely skipping that because I didn't understand. But why don't you show it?
I think these are backwards on the screen. This is George Gershwin, and this is A Home in the Country.
Very
And
good.
you can buy them on eBay, as I do often. My husband's like, oh, the UPS guy's here again. I was like, yes, that's me. I just love them so much, and they're actually really fun to read.
What a cool thing to collect. Isn't it just so neat when after you've, written a book, you've done all the research and all that, and somebody sends you like the real piece of something? I just Shelterwood has the women's clubs in it, and somebody just at a book talk gave me the 1909, the little yearbook from the women's club of 1909 in southeastern Oklahoma,
Oh
and I mean
my
it's so
God.
cool when you get to put your hands on it.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I wish I had it right here, but my sister found my grandmother's original cookie cookbook. And
Oh,
that had the same feeling to it, almost like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I had them reprinted. We're doing the Vineyard launch in 2 weeks at the Grange Hall and out on the Vineyard, and we're going to give out my grandmother's cookie cookbook. But it was one of those that was made by the church, and like all the ladies
right,
would donate a recipe,
right.
and some of the recipes were very elaborate, but my grandmother's was Grandma's Rocks. First of all, terrible name for a cookie. And all it was the ingredients and then drop from spoon. I think she was busy. But
Oh,
those kind of things really tell you a lot, though. And that's why I think eBay is great for writers because you can order something on there and it arrives, and there's nothing like feeling the real thing.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It just,
So,
yeah,
yeah, sorry to interrupt, Lisa. See,
yeah,
now as
no,
we're winding down, 4 questions pop up. This is how things work. Okay, I knew
of
this was going to happen. Let's try to tackle one of them. So, Erin asks, Martha, do you speak any of the languages you have incorporated into your novels? Lilac Girls actually inspired our wedding vows.
wow.
Wedding vows? How did it do that? That's amazing.
uh, Lilac Girls touched me so much that we wrote Coachum, I can't pronounce it, Coachum CIE into our wedding vows.
Oh my God, that's amazing. No, I wish I did speak French. I mean, that's one of if I could snap my fingers and do something, it would definitely be that or play the piano or something. But no, I had to sit with an interpreter that we got from Craigslist in Paris and go through all of Caroline Faraday's French letters. And I was really, wishing I had paid better attention in French class. Um, but yeah, no, I wish. And how wonderful that it inspired your wedding vows. Wow.
both of you may get sick of being asked this question. Kimberly wants to know, though, have any of your books been made into movies, and would you like to see your books made into movies?
You go first, Lisa.
Oh, okay. So no, several have been optioned. Several have been optioned more than once. Some are still optioned now, so fingers crossed. I would
Ooh.
love to see them come to the screen.
Well, you have 30 books. Did you see? That's
Yeah.
just a feat.
Oh, 33, 33 now.
Well, you did get started in first grade.
Yeah, yeah, I did. Well, I've been at it a while. I had babies when I started. I would put a baby in the crib and run to the computer to write for a couple hours while the baby slept.
Oh my,
And now I have grandbabies, so that's how many years it's been.
I don't know how you did that. That's crazy.
It was my thing, it was,
When you're
oh,
passionate about something, yeah.
yeah.
Do you want me to answer that, Robert? The
Sure, Martha.
thing. Elizabeth Moss of Handmaid's Tale fame optioned Lilac Girls, but that was a long time ago. And she really tried to sell it in Hollywood, and they kept saying, "Oh, historical fiction, it's too hard, blah blah blah." So, yeah. And then somebody else came back last year and wanted to do it, and it just, I don't know. I think the universe, if you just go, I don't care, then I think the universe starts to go, oh, okay, here's good stuff. So if you want it too badly, and I also figure once they make The Nightingale, which is, come on, The Nightingale hasn't been made into a movie. It's like once that happens, I think they'll come looking for more historical fiction. That's the theory.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull a page from Lisa's book, so to speak, lightning round. Two quick questions. First question is, Martha, Lisa, what is next for both of you?
I am writing More Than Famous about the 1970s on Martha's Vineyard and the rise of folk rock music, James Taylor and Carly Simon.
Nice. Some of my favorites too. Um, I am finishing up an Audible original. I don't know what the title will be yet, but that'll be out in the fall. And digging into the research on a piece of history I love for another book. But with history, you don't know until you dig into it whether there's a whole story there and whether it fits a novel. So we will see.
Oh, I hope so.
And final question for those watching live and for the many more that will watch the recording, where should people look for you online? Where can they learn more about you? Where should they follow you?
I love Instagram. I'm on Instagram way too much, but also Facebook, and I have a new Substack. So, and of course, marthahallkelly.com. And Lisa?
Facebook, Instagram, and lisawingate.com are my primaries.
Wonderful. So Martha, Lisa, thank you both so much for a wonderful hour. I really enjoyed it. And I think based on all the emojis I'm seeing pop up on the screen and all the kind comments in the chat box, I think our audience did as well. So thank you all so much for watching. For those watching live, please take the feedback survey when you exit the Zoom and look for the follow-up email with the recording later tonight. So thank you, Martha. Thank you, Lisa. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their night.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Lisa.
This was super fun. It was good to see everybody.
So fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.